So now I would like to welcome Dr. Gina Cody, our keynote speaker for today's event. Dr. Cody is a building scientist and structural engineer, as well as the first woman awarded a Ph.D. in the building engineering at Concordia University. In 2018, Dr. Cody made a historic $15 million gift to Concordia's Faculty of Engineering and Computer Science. In honor of her professional accomplishments and her generosity, the faculty was renamed the Gina Cody School of Engineering and Computer Science. It's the first engineering and computer science faculty in Canada to be named after a woman and one of the first internationally. She's also a member of the Order of Montreal and the Order of Canada and a fellow of the Canadian Academy of Engineers. Welcome, Gina.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure and honor for me to be here with you to talk about the important issue of women in construction. I want to thank the organizers for the kind invitation. As a longtime engineer and the president of a major engineering firm, I have spent my fair share of time on construction sites. From crane operators to construction supervisors, I have witnessed firsthand the biases and prejudices that this sector can have towards women. However, I have also seen how women can thrive and flourish in this industry. In fact, to close the gender gap in construction, there has never been a better time. And there is no better backdrop to discuss these issues than on International Women's Day. Some people still ask, why do we celebrate International Women's Day? Why do we have women-specific events? Why do we have women in construction conferences? There are many reasons, yet the most glaring is that despite some progress in certain areas, gender equity remains elusive. And this is particularly true in the construction industry and engineering as a whole. According to Build Force Canada's 2021 Construction and Maintenance Looking Forward report, only about 5% of tradespeople working on construction sites are women. This number rises to about 13% when looking at the entire construction industry, which includes administrative roles. Out of about 1.5 million construction workers nationwide, only about 190,000 are women. This is a number that has changed very little over the past few decades. And while many women can have rewarding careers in construction, many face discrimination and can be made to feel unwelcomed. So we hold women in construction conferences to address some of these issues, to raise awareness, to build solidarity, and to inspire women to join this industry. We celebrate International Women's Day because for most of history, women have not been celebrated or even acknowledged. In fact, for thousands of years, most women had little or no control over their lives. Women had no access to education, no decisions to make about careers, and in many cases, no control over whom they would marry. And this was a reality for most women who ever lived until quite recently. And sadly, it remains the reality for millions of women and girls around the world. it's important to highlight that in Canada, women still do not have equality, and that inequality is even greater for Black, Indigenous, or women of color. In the end, we have a long way to go before having a truly equal, diverse, and inclusive society. And if the past few years have taught us anything, it should be that progress is not guaranteed. We are living in a period of great political, social, and economic uncertainty. A resurgence of ignorance and intolerance is sweeping across many Western countries. Fights we thought were won years ago are being dragged back into the spotlight. This is why we cannot be complacent. This is why we need to continue to advocate and fight for equality. But I want to be clear, despite some setbacks, I believe we are making forward progress. I believe the future is bright, and a big reason for that is because of the efforts of countless organizations and individuals, people like you committed to fighting for equality. Since I sold my engineering firm and retired in 2016, I have been committed to helping build a more inclusive, diverse, and equal future, particularly in engineering and other traditionally male-dominated fields. As a woman and an immigrant, this is a subject that is close to my heart. I came to Montreal from Iran during the revolution in 1979. I had just completed my undergraduate degree in engineering from a top school in Iran. My dream was to complete my master's and Ph.D., but I had only $2,000 to my name. My late brother, Mahmoud, had just completed his bachelor's in engineering at Concordia. I was to be enrolled in engineering at another university, but had no way of paying the tuition. He convinced me to meet one of his professors, Cedric Marsh. After a 1-hour meeting with Professor Marsh, he said to me, "Come to Concordia. Why would you go anywhere else? We will give you financial support." That day, Professor Marsh and Concordia changed my life. I completed my master's degree, and then in '89, I became the first woman awarded a PhD from Concordia's building engineering program. During my academic experience and professional career, I was often the only woman in the room. Unfortunately, I'm sure some of you can relate to that. I remember attending a conference in Toronto in the '80s, where I was the only woman among 700 attendees. The MC began his introduction with "lady and gentlemen." My drive to rise to the highest academic and professional levels was in large part thanks to my parents. I grew up with 3 brothers, all engineers, and 1 sister who became a dentist. My father owned an all-boys high school. He made sure I was always comfortable in traditionally male environments. During summers, my father had me teach classes in his high school to boys who were 14 to 16 years old. I remember my father saying to me, "If you can handle boys that age, you can handle anyone." And that has certainly proven to be true. Like my father, my mother was ahead of her time. She was a housewife. who married young and never finished high school. Yet she understood the importance and value of education, especially for her daughters. I clearly remember her words to me and my sister when we were young. She used to say, the only way to be independent as women is through education. My mother was an exceptional woman, and she was right. Education is the great equalizer. Education is the most effective way to achieve social mobility. Education can also help overcome various forms of discrimination, including racism and sexism. When I was president of my engineering firm, my assistant would often transfer calls to me from men looking to speak to the boss. So when I answered, they would again ask for the boss, to which I would reply, I'm the boss. Sometimes they would still sound doubtful. So I would say, I have a Ph.D. in building engineering. How can I help you? That almost always got their attention, if not their respect. The point, of course, wasn't that they were doubting my education. They were doubting my competency as a woman. While things are changing, we still have a lot of ground to cover. But here is the great news. There has never been a better time for women to embark on careers in the construction industry. According to the Built Force Canada's report, the country could be facing a deficit of more than 80,000 construction workers by 2030. This is also true in engineering sector. According to Engineers Canada, we could be short as many as 100,000 engineers. This is due to an aging population of experienced laborers and engineers set to retire, people like me, and the projected demand for more tradespeople and engineers. It goes without saying that this could be very damaging for Canada's economy and long-term prosperity. Attracting more women is one key strategy to cutting into this labor deficit. The world is in the midst of its fourth industrial revolution, and we cannot afford to leave nearly half our workforce behind. While the previous industrial revolutions were about advances in technology, such as the invention of steam power, the railway, and machine manufacturing, the advent of electric power and petroleum fuel. And then during the third revolution, during the digital era, we saw the rise of telecommunication and computers. The fourth revolution is about connectivity between existing, evolving, and new technologies. We see this in the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, advanced manufacturing, smart cities, and much, much more. This revolution relies not on physical labor and strength, but on innovation and design through highly technical skills and knowledge. In other words, it relies on skilled workers and technology. Tech and engineering companies are imagining, designing, and creating how the future will look, feel, and sound. So what happens if the people building the world of tomorrow represent only the majority? Everyone else is left behind. Technology can connect, bridge divides, and open new lines of communication. But it can also restrict and censor. It can create echo chambers and silos of thoughts and ideas. We all have a different relationship to technology. We use and have access to technology in very different ways. A study in 2019, published in the Washington Post and the Guardian, found that safety features in cars are designed for men. And the crash test dummies used to assess a vehicle's safety features, guess what? They are based on the size of the average male. This leads to women being nearly 50% more likely to be seriously injured, 50%, and more than 70% more likely to suffer minor injuries in a crash than men. This holds true, even though men are more likely to be involved in an accident. Why? Because they were designed by men for men, from the height of the seat belts to the positioning and the strength of the airbags. Everything is calibrated for men. And we have all heard examples of AI taking on the biases of the programmers or of learning bad behaviors, as was the case of Tay, Microsoft's failed chatbot. There's also the case of Compass, a computer program used by courts in the United States to flag defendants who were likely to reoffend. An investigative report by ProPublica found that under this system, Black defendants were wrongly identified at nearly twice the rate of white defendants, making a notoriously discriminatory justice system even more so. A recent study by the United States National Institute of Standards and Technology found that a majority of face recognition algorithms in use are racist. The study showed that Asian, African American, or indigenous faces resulted in much higher false positive matches than Caucasian faces, sometimes by a factor of 10 or 100 times. This matters because law enforcement increasingly relies on this technology to identify criminals or security threats, which means that visible minorities are far more likely to be falsely arrested or detained than white people. Many of these biases and oversights aren't intentional, but as they say, you don't know what you don't know. That is why it's so critical that every group gets a proportional voice at the table. Whether it's a construction firm or a team of software engineers, the people shaping our society need to be representative of the people living in our society, something that sadly is not the case here in Canada and in most of the world. And the studies on diversity are clear. Companies that are more diverse, equal, and inclusive are significantly more competitive and profitable. A report by McKinsey & Company found that companies with greater gender diversity in executive positions were up to 21% more profitable than their male-dominated counterparts. Those companies with greater ethnic diversity were up to 33% more profitable than less diverse competitors. So promoting diversity and equality isn't just morally and ethically right. It's a smart business. The conditions for achieving gender equity has never been better. Yet the ongoing pandemic has the potential to set women back. With the many school and daycare closures, some couples were faced with the difficult decision of having one parent to be the primary caregiver while the other worked. Data from Stats Canada show that women spend more than twice as much time on childcare in a couple than men do. They also spend 40% more time on household chores than men. This means women are more likely to put their careers on hold to care for their children. And even if they don't quit their jobs, their performances are more likely to be adversely affected. A 2020 McKinsey & Company report estimated that COVID-19 could set women back at least half a decade. Based on a survey of 40,000 Americans, 1 in 4 women were contemplating downshifting their careers or leaving the workforce completely. This was an American study, but based on the statistics I mentioned earlier for Stats Canada, it's likely that there is a similar pattern emerging here. The key factor here is that many women are pulling double shifts. They're being forced to choose between their children and their careers. So my message to men is be better allies to women. At home, be better partners. At work, be better colleagues. The main issue women have entering male-dominated fields isn't that there aren't any other women. It isn't that women are inherently uninterested in these fields. The issue is that these environments are often actively hostile to women. Whenever women are trespassed on traditionally male territory, they have been made unwelcome. For example, while less than 13% of working engineers are women, more than 20% of engineering graduates are women. Why do we see such a big drop between women who graduate and those who work in engineering? Because even in the classroom, women can be made to feel unwelcome or disrespected. Then doing internship in male-dominated fields, young women are often not taken seriously. They frequently endure inappropriate comments and behaviors, and in some cases, face open hostility from men. By the time they get their degree, they are already disillusioned. And if they aren't, the same behaviors are waiting for them when they enter the workforce. Is it any wonder that women often choose to change careers rather than face that every day? Women don't need special treatment. We just need a level playing field. My hope for 2022 is that we can come together and help make the field just little more level. Don't underestimate the importance and significance of your role. Each of us has the power to make a difference. As the famous Persian poet Rumi said, "You're not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. So be the change maker." Thank you. Back to you, Danielle.
Hi, Gina. Thank you so much for that. Was excellent. Such an informative and honestly inspiring presentation. I can relate to you. I have experience being the only woman in a room or at a function, an event. So I definitely understand what that can feel like at times. So I'm sure many others can as well. Okay, so we have a few questions here. One of them is, your father clearly did a very good job making you comfortable in an all-male setting. What can company owners do to replicate his success in their organizations?
I think the companies have a big role, and that is to increase that awareness and giving the platform to their women. I always say that we are not in your locker rooms when the men are there and they speak. So when there is a derogatory term, there is comments made against fellow workers or fellow female participants, we cannot defend ourselves there. We need men as allies, and the companies and the co-workers, we need them to speak up, because we're not in the locker room to speak up, to defend ourselves. So we need you guys to defend. So it's a change of the culture and giving the platform to women, and also making them to have the power to speak up, and keeping people who are not respecting that accountable. I think there is a lot of work needs to be done, especially in the field that we are today speaking about. Yeah. This field needs a lot of improvement. We need women there, because you are going to have shortage of laborers, skilled engineers, skilled scientists. So to attract them, you need to create an environment that is welcoming. And also, men need to be more cooperative at home. I give talks on that. You know, when even at home, you need to support your wives and sisters and give them their room, because even to this state, women feel that they are responsible for all home care, the child care, the cooking, while the best chefs are men, women do all the cooking. I don't get that. So we need to change that mentality as a whole to overcome this whole bias and have more women in the workforce.
Yeah, for many of us, it's like having 2 or 3 full-time jobs, right? You do your day job and you go home and keep doing it still.
Double shift.
Yeah, exactly. So what happens when women get involved with construction organization? Oh, how does the culture change? Would you just explain that, actually, talking about that whole culture change and sort of men getting involved?
We need them as allies. I always say that we can get there. It's going to take us longer time. We need men as allies. We need them to speak up. And I always say, if you're not in your locker rooms, please speak up when you hear derogatory term. And in construction, I've been there. I've seen it. It's not good. Mm-hmm. We need to change that. And it is upon every one of us, men and women, to change that culture.
Are the assumptions in the construction industry that make life difficult for women similar to the assumptions that drove the bad car safety design that you talked about? Meaning, will men not think about women, the setting on the job sites to help providing with tools and equipment and things that women need to make the job easier for them? Are they more geared towards males?
Absolutely. You know, I always say that they were built by men for men. So to change that, women need to get involved in all aspects. That's why I'm so active in speaking. we need them to be part of the design process, to change the design, because all construction equipments are made for men. That is, I don't have to go through the statistics on that. It's very clear. It's car safety features are made for men because by men. So when there's accident, there are 70% more women get injured. So there are all aspects are much more difficult for women than men. And to change that, women have to participate. And that's why I speak up. You need to be part of the change to bring the change. You need to be in the construction to change that industry. Otherwise, it will never change.
Right. Okay. Earlier, you did mention about labor shortage in this industry. And the Quebec government has announced new scholarships, upwards of 20,000 for students in programs with labor shortages, one of them being engineering. Do you see this funding helping to diversify the industry?
I'm hoping, yes, it will. And actually, I was very delighted when the Quebec government came with that program. The only thing is we need to make the environment more palatable, and we are doing that. One of the things that I see, when the name of the university at Concordia named after my name, Gina Cody School of Engineering and Computer Science, I didn't do it for my name. I wanted women to feel empowered to get into engineering and computer science. Can you believe that it's the first one in Canada and one of the first in the world, an engineering and computer science faculty named after a woman? We need to change that mentality. I'm not happy. I'm really saddened by this news that even at this day, we don't have encouragement for women. Women have to feel that they're part of the change to bring the change. They have to participate.
So the government has this funding. Are there other areas that you believe the government should be funding to help support women or encourage women to get into the industry?
I think that the support is there. They are trying, but again, these are limited to certain provinces. It's not across the country. To encourage women, we have to make the environment more acceptable, and by participation, we will change them.
Yeah.
So, when the faculty of Concordia was named after a woman, it wasn't about me, it was about women participation in engineering and computer science. So it wasn't that I wanted to say, I really don't care. I just want women in the industry. And the more of us get into that, there would be more participation. So the women need to participate to increase the participation.
Okay. And can I ask, what motivated you? Like, you talk about engineering, it being difficult for women, and you knew and understood it was going to be difficult. What motivated you to pursue a career in engineering?
I think I wouldn't have been good in anything else. I loved engineering. when I was a kid, I would, in old times, you don't remember, you weren't even born then, the TVs, for example, were made out of light bulbs. So if the TV wasn't working, I would tear it apart, find the bulb that wasn't working, get it. And my brothers were older than me. Nobody would care. I was the one who would do the change. So I was intrigued into engineering, and I felt that I can bring change. At the time that I was young, I didn't even know what change was. I just loved it. But I think the more we are there, the change will come. And we need more women to participate in construction and in every aspect that there aren't many women to change that. We are in an era that there shouldn't be any difference between men and women, because we don't need a strength, we need brain, and we have it all. So why wouldn't we be able to participate?
And I think we have time for one more question. And I know there are other questions. You have a lot of questions coming in and a lot of people asking for information. So if you're okay, we'll share some of your contact information afterwards so we can get the rest of these.
I would love that. Yes.
Yeah. But I guess the final question is, you mentioned you have daughters. If they were going into the industry, what would be words of wisdom that you would give to them if they were entering into a sort of a male-dominated construction engineering industry?
My word would be, we need you. We need you there. So get their strengths and don't be afraid. When you have confidence in yourself, you will be remembered. I was many times, I mentioned, in 700 attendees, I was the only woman, but they remembered me. And that gave me a strength. Rather than looking at the negative, I looked at the positive. I said, okay, now they're going to remember me. So I better be good. So I tried to be on top of my forum. I was prepared. I knew the agenda. I prepared. So women need, if they want to advance in this type of industry, they need to be prepared and they need to work hard, and they will be accepted. I promise you.
Well, thank you. It was really great having you. It was an excellent presentation and discussion. And for those people who didn't get their questions answered, we will get some information over to you. But that's all the time we have. Thank you, Gina. It was great hearing your story.
Thank you.